Hi everybody, a very warm welcome to a very sad day because this is the last episode in our Cheltenham Festival series here on the Jumps Show. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of laughs have been had, not a huge amount of money has been made, at least by myself and by Dan, but we've had a great time and that's the main thing. Hopefully we've given you some pointers along the way. Jake, Price and Dan over alongside me once again. Jake, how are you? You enjoyed Cheltenham?
Oh, it was great, yeah. Obviously, I had the place in Cheltenham, had you guys over on the Tuesday, down there all week. Yeah, we just had an amazing time all week, and thankfully we did get a few winners anyway.
Well, you did.
Yeah.
I understand. Dan, to be fair, Dan, you had a very, very good first day, didn't you?
Oh, it was getting a bit silly at one stage. And yeah, I mean, I was going into the Fred Winter. I'd gone through the card. I mean, Constitution Hill was one of them if you're counting, but it was all going very well. Wednesday and Thursday took a bit of a dip. And then we bounced back on Friday. And anyone who watched the handicap stream, Aroko got me out of a nice little jam on Friday. I'd been so painfully close to so many handicap winners basically all week. And I think I'd had about 2 or 3 jumping the last in front and just not got home. So for one to actually win, that was rounded off what was an absolutely superb week.
Yeah, it really was, isn't it? One of those great weeks, and I'm glad that you both managed to get there for all 4 days. I was only there for 1 day, but enjoyed every single second of it. That I was.
It was
there.
stamina testing, but we got there.
Yeah,
very impressive.
There were plenty of doubters. It was like Brayman's game in the Gold Cup. Not many thought I would stay. And to be fair, on the Wednesday, obviously great to speak to so many of you guys who came up to us. Thank you for that. But anyone who would come up to me on the Wednesday, apologies about the lack of vocal cord action going on there. I literally couldn't speak for about 24 hours. It wasn't great, but that was probably symptomatic of the very good Tuesday we all enjoyed.
It was one of those great race days you're never going to forget, isn't it? That Tuesday, it was just had everything, like so much emotion, great winners, Constitution Hill, Honeysuckle. That was class, wasn't it? It really was.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's move on to how we did at Cheltenham, because this is all, well, for me, this is a bit of a sob story, I have to admit. But in a way, I'm looking forward to really grumbling about some of the performances of my horses. I'll tell you what, Jake, should we start with you? Because you have a review of your selections that deserve to be shouted and blared from the turrets triumphant. So off you go, because you had a cracking week.
Yes, a profitable week. Thank God. Yeah, we all had a good year last year. Obviously not as great this year, but I'm just happy to get an unprofitable year in, because it was a difficult week. I know a lot of people have said it, but especially for the Ante-Post side of things, up in the Ante had a pretty poor time of things, and a couple of our series did as well. So it was tough going. But yes, thankfully, Jazzy Matty managed to hit the board on the first day. I was there that day, and obviously it was an amazing day of racing, but I hadn't put up any of the winners up until that point on that day. So I was there a bit sour in the corner, just clapping in these horses, like, well done. But thankfully, Jazzy Matty came along and managed to scream that one home. Michael O'Sullivan, what a ride. Like, when he put in that slow jump at the last, having traveled like a dream, I thought, that's it, that one's over. But to get the horse up between 2 horses, I thought was magical. And yeah, testament to the jockey and what he's going to become. So yeah, great to get that one in. 300 through 5, he didn't really run the race, he didn't get his position. But Tiupu, I think, was the most frustrating one else on my list. He looked to had given a brilliant hold-up ride. I thought Davey had got it all right at that point, and you were just waiting for him to kick on like he had done in previous performances. 1 over 2 miles, 1 over 2.5 miles, always stayed on strongly, and he never did. He had to be switched twice in the home straight, which really didn't help his chances. But even if he went on a straight course, I don't think there was ever that moment where you saw him pick up and really attack the leaders and make some ground. So that was a very frustrating second. In fairness, though, I do think that he has the 12-1 about him for next year. It isn't that bad, considering the Bartlett types seem like chasers and stuff. So yeah, Tiupu was a bit frustrating. The rest were nowhere. Spanish Harlem is a boat, absolutely confirmed. Pumped along the whole way around, went nowhere. Not even Mikey O'Sullivan could save him. And Hidden Valley Lake was a bit disappointing as well. But the other 2 from that Mercedes-Benz got pulled up, so perhaps he did finish best of those lot, but maybe it just wasn't as good a race as we thought, or too close to the festival. So Yeah, overall it was plus 10 points on the win, which is what I advised. And if you did it all each way, it'd be plus 4.6 points. So I'm very happy with that.
As you should be. I think that's incredibly admirable, I have to say. Yeah, as Jazzy Matty crossed the line, I was cheering for you, I have to say, Jake. I thought to myself,
I bloody wasn't. I was on Risk Bell, who jumped the last 11th up, and I couldn't believe it. I spent 5 minutes on the steps with my head in my hands. I was like, I was in shock. I thought she literally kicked a length clear for, yes, lads, 6 out of 6. We're going to do it all. We've got everything up. And then I just see, I didn't even know who it was initially until Jake screamed the words, "I've done it," like he rode the horse to victory. I had no idea who Risk Bell was against. But yeah, that was a trauma. That was when our week started to diverge, I think. That was where the paths really separated. But yeah, it was some race. And those are the ones that you really remember. The handicap winners in a close finish. Like, you'll always remember Jazzy Matty for that reason. He could do nothing ever and be sold to God knows who in a couple of years' time. It wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Oh, I just remember Jazzy Matty winning and then going around to about 3 or 4 people being like, Jake Price has been going about this horse for months and months. Like, I can't believe it's actually won.
I know.
It's class, absolute class. Yeah, so bloody good week, Jake, and big congratulations, because you absolutely smashed me, I have to say. Dan, I think you've been a bit unlucky in a way because, well, fast or slow. I mean, I know you didn't win, but a little bit unlucky the fact that you were going on about and you really fancied him for the wrong race.
Yeah, we'll start with him. I think I can trace my lack of voice on the Wednesday back to fast or slow, because I don't think you'll hear anyone scream loud over a horse not to win as I was doing with fast or slow when they jumped the last. Not only because I'd backed Correct Round on the day, but if he'd won the Ultimate, I would have seriously just given up, because there was no reason for this horse to be in the Ultimate. To be fair, he definitely stayed. He's definitely a 3-mile chaser, but I mean, it's some campaign to do that. John Durkan, Dublin Chase, Ultima is a route that I don't think many will try. So fair play. I mean, they gave it a go, and it was some ambitious campaigning. Obviously, Martin Brazel just can't stop trading seconds at the Cheltenham Festival. It's an unbelievable record. But yeah, he was. What turned out to be quite a poor plate. I think he would have definitely had a chance if he ran me said and won it, for the Lord's sake. So. He would have had a good chance. We can go through these. I mean, Goodland, look at that Albert Bartlett now. I think a healthy Goodland probably wins that Albert Bartlett and then does another lap to celebrate. I think it was a very, very poor race because so many disappointed. Dark Raven looked again like he did in Dublin Race Festival, like he actually might go very close in the Supreme. Again, ran in the wrong race. I thought he'd run in the Ballymore because he looked like a horse all about stamina, but after travelling well, actually just finished quite tamely again, which is a pretty bit of a concern really for his long-term future. Lord Accord, the ground went against him, and yet they still ran him in the Kim Muir instead of the Ultima, and he pulled up literally with a lap to go. I don't know what they were thinking there. Like, it was just the ground had gone. Why bother running him in the first place? And then we get to a mile a mission. I still don't know. I mean, he hit 1 to 3 in running, but I mean, I was watching the race with Andrew, who was also on him Ante-Post, and we were both just kind of there, like, even when he came round to the bend 6 lengths up, we weren't ever really happy, because it's some effort to do that. If he was going to win, it would have been some effort to kick on that far from home and stay up. I'm not sure. I think he probably would have got headed anyway. I do think it was a bad ride. There was absolutely no reason to kick that soon. It actually reminded me slightly of Lord de Menil a few years ago, who... Again, I'd backed Ante-Post for the National Hunt. I need to stop backing the National Hunt Chase. Like, it does me every time. Like, Lord and Mill, again, kicked on about 4 out, looked the winner all the way, more so than Marlon Mission did, and got headed by Raven Hill, of all things. Yeah. So that race is just a bit of a curse to me. I think if you're going to be generous, I think it is unlucky, and we probably would have gone fairly close, but that's how it goes. Andy Dufresne was probably my best valued bet of the week, 20 to 1 into about 5 to 1. There was only about 5 seconds of that race where I thought he actually might get competitive, and it was halfway down the back where he just latched on to the leading group. But other than that, it was very disappointing. And on the Tuesday night, I had people saying left, right, and centre, "Oh, this horse has been working the house down. Like, he's been doing so well. Like, he's going to absolutely bolt up." I was like, come on. I was literally already counting the winnings, but never really got into it, which is disappointing. And then it all came down to Sharjah. It was my last bet, who ran pretty much as advertised, I would say. I thought he'd be ridden with restraint. Thought he'd come there to the last, travelling well, and looked like he had a chance. A gap did close on him, which didn't help. I've watched it back, but I don't think that made the difference between winning and losing. I think the pace of the race just wasn't strong enough for a hold-up horse in his position. Patrick gave him a fine ride into fourth for place money. I think it probably would have made a length or two difference, the slight gap issue, but wouldn't have stopped him from winning. So yeah, disappointing week on the Ante-Post front anyway. Again, it's one of those where the average price is like 22 to 1 or something. So it's going to be hit and miss. Like, that's how I like to play it. I like to try and give it a shout. I like to go for the least trodden path. And sometimes it bites you. And this is one of the years it's bitten me. But the good news is I'm on a great streak of bad year, good year, bad year. So next year, keep following. It's going to be a good one. Just you wait.
I'm sure it will be, mate. I'm sure. And you know what? It's going to be a good year for me as well next year. I can feel it deep within my loins. I won't dwell too long on my selections because it's too painful, really. But obviously, Classic Getaway and Hidden Heroics didn't run. Liberty Dance didn't run. And that left me with a handful, of which Il Était Temps was disappointing. I looked at him in the parade ring. He was a bit of a diminutive sort, a lot smaller than I thought he was. Yeah, and I worry about him in the hurly-burly of a race like that. And in the end, of course, he didn't really run very well. So that was a shame. And I think he didn't run to the level that he did at Leopardstown, but at the same time, I don't think the race would have suited him as much as it did Leopardstown. Nube Negra was a complete washout because the rain came, and obviously Nube Negra needs it quick. So that was always going to be a problem for him. And as a result, he was about 12 to 1 when it was the week before, because it was decent ground. And then as soon as the rain came, he was pushed out to 25 and the writing was on the wall. Oscar Elite, he ran very well again, though. Like, he's a horse that just does my head in. Like, he does my head in.
Told you this would happen.
But he just lost the entire way. The amount of ground he had to make up to finish 5th was unbelievable. Like, if he'd been close to the pace, I know you're going to tell me he was off the pace because he couldn't go the pace. But at the same time, I have absolutely no doubt that he could have been a little bit handier. I think he ran absolute cracker. To be fair, given the amount of ground he had to make up, he was bang there or thereabouts. I thought he was going to win at one stage. Like, it was a serious run. So well done to him, even though he only finished 5th. And Brave Man's Game obviously ran a cracker in the Gold Cup currency. With credit for that, because it's not exactly rocket science picking that one out. But 8 to 1 second, I'm fairly happy with that. The big disappointment for me was Blood Destiny, who I went on about for so long. I mean, just every person I talked to beforehand, I've got a few Ante-Post selections, but the real one is Blood Destiny in the trial. Look at me. The writing was on the wall from a very early stage, unfortunately. I mean, I don't quite know whether it was Patrick couldn't really hold him, and he was very keen. And then I thought, given the way that he's won in Ireland, just roll on with him. Either do that or try and conserve his energy by keeping him covered. He didn't really do either. He was just kind of in there or thereabouts towards the head of affairs, but he was just racing too keenly. The writing was on the wall from a long way from home. I knew he was going to be beaten. So that was a big shame. All in all, I think a week that was very enjoyable, but not particularly profitable. And I think I was banking on Blood Destiny being my one to kind of cart me out of trouble. But in the end, he carted Patrick Mullins into trouble. So that was the that was the main one I was hoping for. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But of course, lads, throughout the week there were some unbelievably good performances from equine beasts, and we're going to look at the performance of the week from each of us now. And I'm going to start by saying that we obviously can't pick out Constitution Hill because that's too obvious, but at the same time, he probably was the performance of the week for most people because he was so ridiculously impressive. Constitution Hill aside, Jake, what was your performance of the week?
Yeah, well, obviously, we've all put our list together here, and they're all very similar lists, so we're going to spread that out a little bit. But the one I've gone for is El Fabiolo in the Arkle. I just thought that was a brilliant performance, and it really marks him down as a champion chaser for next year. When Dice Up Dynamo's in a race, you're going to have a proper race. It's going to be truly run. You're going to have to stay. You're going to have to be able to quicken. And going down the hill, I thought that Paul Townend had given El Fabio, a fair amount to do. He wasn't getting that close, but then, rounding the home bend, he just effortlessly got there. Poor old Dysart fell at that, at the last, and it was good to see him get back up. But El Fabiolo just powered on up the hill, and tactics like that are going to suit him really well in a champion chase. And he's actually favourite on a lot of boards for that race, despite Energumene going on and being impressive himself in the champion chase. So I can see why Energumene is going to be 10 next year. So it makes sense. El Fabiolo is the up and comer. I'm sure we'll be having this debate this time next year, or just a few weeks before, but about who's going to be the winner out of those two. But yeah, we've seen that time and time again. The Arkle record in the champion chase is very good, and I think El Fabiolo could be the real deal.
Yeah, I rather agree. I think a clash between him and an Ergman, if they both turn up in the best form possible, will be something to savour, really. Dan, I know that you liked El Fabiolo as well, but you like another one performance of the week, don't you?
Yeah, pulling the curtain away, me and Jake had a list of 3 because we thought we'd choose similar horses, and we chose the exact same 3 horses. So a bit worrying that we think so similarly, yet I could do so much worse over an 8-week period in Ante-Post betting. But we move on. I'm kicking myself when I'm down there. That's a new one for me. But I won't win prizes for originality with this one, but I thought Galopin Des Champs won what was probably a very above average Gold Cup.
Yeah.
It was just, I was unsure. I think a few were pretty much thought he was bomb-proof, but I thought there was a chance that if he jumped like he did in the Irish Gold Cup, he could get out of a rhythm early and be slightly behind in a position where he didn't necessarily want to be. But it kind of did happen that way, to be fair. Like, he lost his place a bit, but Paul Townend gave him a very patient ride, nursed him back into contention. And while the others, like Brave Man's Game and Completed, were handy for out, jumped very well, like, he had to do it the hard way. But I say, brilliant ride by Paul Townend. Once he loomed up on the outside of Brave Man's Game, you thought there's only really one horse here who's going to find more up the hill. And he did so in a very, very impressive manner. Like, I've seen comparisons with A Plus Tard's performance today on Twitter and debate about who was better, because I think he's been rated £2 lower than A Plus Tard was for his Gold Cup win. In my mind, and it may be slightly recency bias, I thought Galopin Des Champs was more impressive. I thought the pace of the race was stronger. I thought you had the front 3 were the front 3 you wanted in the race. I know there were a couple of fallers, a couple of disappointments, but the fact that they were so far clear, Brave Man's Game and Galopin Des Champs certainly were. I just think that paints some race in a very, very good light. I think Brave Man's Games ran bang up to his best. I think Conflated is pretty much bang up, though, with his as well. Like, that was a good Gold Cup, and he's won very, very comfortably. Only a young horse still. Like, the world's his oyster, and they've all got to get to him now. He's the king in that division without any question.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So impressed by that. I mean, I think he's a wonderful horse to look forward to for next year. I thought Brave Man's Game ran an absolute belter in second as well. But what a horse!
Paul was beaming when he walked back in Brave Man's Game. He was absolutely beaming.
Not surprised. Yeah,
he ran his.
I think he knows he's been beaten by a monster. He knows he's been beaten by a monster.
Absolutely, yeah, big time.
Yeah, that's what says it all. Is if Paul's happy with Brave Man's Game finishing second, then yeah, that you can rate the race around that, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. That is not a man who likes finishing second. Jake, you had another selection, didn't you? I mean, you both did, I know, because you got the same list. But what was the other horse you liked?
The other one I guess I'll give mention to is Imperic Pass. In the Ballymore, I thought he showed tremendous pace. A lot of people have mentioned that the champion hurdle could be his next port of call. And as being a 5-year-old, I'd imagine that's kind of how Willie wants to play it. But obviously Constitution here is going to be the fly in the ointment there, and I'd imagine they'll just avoid him no matter which way they go. But Imperic Pass on the day, despite drifting out and unholy amount of money coming in for Hermes Allen, I thought it was a very, very good performance. And yeah, he's clearly a very talented individual as well.
Yeah, he certainly is. To put the breath away where you clicked up, I have to say, Ruby was absolutely right when he said he's one of the fastest horses he's ever seen.
Yeah, they all told us beforehand.
Yeah, they did.
They also told us about Blood Destiny, and look how that worked out.
Don't mention that again, Dan.
Yeah, sorry, that's low. That was low, but had to be done.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Keep doing it for another year. I'm sure it's going to be something that remains funny. Yeah, it remains funny. I'm going to put up one that's slightly off-piste. Rather than, performance of the week, I'm doing this not quite so on equine performance. I'm doing it as well as on trainer and jockey performance, because I thought the Real Wacko was produced expertly by Patrick Neville in the Brown Advisory to win that race. And I'm very glad they didn't go for the Gold Cup, even though I think he would have won a decent race. Obviously, he wouldn't have got anywhere near the principals, but he would have run well. And I thought Sam Twiston-Davies gave it an absolutely fantastic ride. He kicked exactly the right time. I know he's got a very good jumper under him, but he could easily have done what plenty of jockeys have done in the past and kick on early on the real whacker, but he didn't. He bade his time, and only when Bron came up sides surrounding the home turn did he really start to kick away. And I think he timed it to an absolute nicety, because we saw Sherry Colon was only beaten a short head in the end. And I think had Sam gone any earlier, the result would have been different. So very well done to him, very well done to Patrick Neville, and very well done to the real whacker to beat a horse who I think is very talented, Jerry Colomb, and he was tapped for toe at a crucial stage, but he was probably the best horse in the race, but everything transpired correctly for the real whacker. So that's my performance of the week, despite Imperio Pass and Galopin producing more visually impressive efforts. I thought that was a rude story and display from the real whacker. So that's what I've gone for. Right, last thing we're going to discuss in this Cheltenham series is Cheltenham next year. So one tip from each of us for the 2024 festival. And Dan, should we start with you? And I'm expecting something extremely off-piste here. At least I'm hoping for it.
I mean, there's no handicap prices up yet, Tom, so I can't be that wild. Although, I mean, who was favourite for the Grand Annual? Dino Blue next year. That'll be some shout. Although it'd probably go like Andy Dufresne did. But no, I've gone with a mare I have a lot of time for. I backed her for the Triumph Hurdle, thinking that a strong pace would help. She didn't really get it, and that's Gala Marceau. I think she's 25-1 for the mare's hurdle currently. I think Lossy Mouth is 5 for comparison. I just think that's a bit too big. Look, I'm a big fan of hers. Part of the reason I backed her on the day, and again, she actually came for a lot of late money. She went off 10-3 somehow, and she was like 11-2 for most of the day. But I thought there'd be a strong pace with the likes of Blood Destiny and Jupiter Jeet and co. I thought that would really help her settle, and I thought that would bring her stamina into the race. But ultimately, the pace was only strong for about 6 furlongs because Jupiter Jeet is an absolute nutcase, and he could only go for about that far before completely checking out. And I saw a tweet from Simon Rowlands, I think it was on Sunday, and he looked at the fastest final 3 furlong times across the week. The first 3 in the Triumph were the 3 quickest, which isn't, I know it's only a 2-mile race, but like it's something for them to be the top 3. And the quickest final 3 furlong time was Gala Marceau. And you think that's indicative of a race that ended up being quite a test of speed at the trip rather than a test of stamina, which really just didn't suit Gala Marceau in the end. I think she's a mare that's absolutely going to fry for stepping up in trip. She is still learning to race. She was still a bit keen, but she probably jumped the best she ever has in the Triumph. I think she's definitely on an upward curve still. I think the hood has also certainly helped. And you look at the mares division currently in open company, it's going through a bit of a transition now. Like we had a lot of build up to this mare's hurdle, but now we have Honeysuckle retired. Maurice Rock is probably looking like a 3-miler now, and obviously was disappointing. Epitant's getting on a bit too. The only one from this year's race you could probably make a case for staying around is Love Envoy, who sets an admirable standard, but is understandably a much shorter price as a result. And while I do think Lossy Mouth is a very, very good filly, I think 5-1 is short enough considering she looks more speed. And I'm not sure she's crying out for 2.5, even with another year on her. So I think Gala Marceau almost certainly wants 2.5. I think there's no reason for her to go over the fences just yet. She's still learning. I can definitely see her going that route. And again, it would be quite adequate for the owners to have a mare to fill right into Honeysuckle's quite large shoes. But I think she's got the talent to contend in a race like the mare's hurdle.
Thanks for that wonderfully cogent and concise case, Dan. I have to say I'm going to miss that once this jump show is over for the season. Always lovely to hear those.
The viewers won't. Always gets them in trouble.
They're like me, they certainly will. Those dulcet arguments are just wonderful to listen to. Jake, what about you, 2024?
Yeah, before, it was funny, a couple of people did come up to us, which thank you very much for everyone who did, but they did say to Dan, you talk me around to every single horse that you ever talk about.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. So someone literally said, you need to stop, pause for a minute. I was like, stop recording, stop speaking. And it said, stop being so convincing. I was like, well, yeah, sorry about that. Here's 20 quid to make up for it. I'm sorry.
That was one
very nice, but it's like the backhanded compliment I didn't need on the Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so I did start by looking through the novice hurdles, as I've done in previous years, but having looked at this year's winners, none of them had even been seen at this point. So we had Marine National hadn't won his bumper yet, Imperic Pass hadn't been bought from France yet, and Stay Away Faye hadn't been bought from the point-to-point field yet. So I just thought I'd leave them alone, go to the novice chasers, where at least we know a bit about the horses, albeit some of them are still unexposed, and could definitely progress next year. So I've got two to mention. The first one is Free Card Bragg for the National Hunt Chase. I went and watched back the Albert Park a couple of times. Let's be clear about it, was kind of on the list. Standard Clegane was kind of on the list, but I think Free Card Bragg is the one that you can, almost put your hat on. He's going to be having this as a target. I mean, I've put it odds on that he's qualified, put it that way. I guess your one concern would be that McNeil's want Adrian Heskin on, and perhaps he'll go to the Brown Advisory because of that. But you've got Gordon Elliott as the convincer here, and I know he didn't get his way with Martin Pike, but he'd definitely be able to get his way, I reckon, with an amateur like Jamie Codd or something that's booked. And it's not the first time that they've had a runner here in the National Hunt Chase. So Free Card Bragg is on the list. I think he's an absolute stay, and I think a lot of people talk about soft ground for him, but I think chasing will actually be the making of him. And as we saw last week, you could end up getting soft ground anyway. The other one I like is In the Pocket for the Turners. Now, again, I liked him for the Ballymore this year. He ended up going back for the Supreme. A bit annoying, but if you went and watched that race back, he's run an absolute blinder for fourth. Yet again, he's shown his cruising speed. Perhaps got a bit tap for toe when they've quickened round in the home bend, but again, stayed on strongly. Was just behind Diverge fourth. Surely he's going to be going up in trip on his next start, and that could be at Aintree or Punchestown, where I'd give him a great chance if Imperic Pass doesn't turn up. But either way, next season, I think he's going to be a top class chaser. He's already a point-to-point winner, so I think fences are going to be the making of him, and 2.5 over fences, considering how much pace they think he has, and he does have, would make sense. So yeah, they're my two for next year.
Arclid is then.
Love that. Yeah, I would. Yeah, In the Pocket is a really interesting one, actually. I need to think about him for next year. I'm going to go with two races that are more established, and I'm going to go with Home by the Lee for the stayers next year at 20-1, because he was incredibly unlucky, I thought, in the actual stayers. He made a dreadful mistake at the 6th, which really knocked the stuffing out of him. So much so that I think he was just on the back foot from then on in, but he stayed on really well to finish 5th, and it wasn't actually beaten that far. I think if he hadn't made that mistake, he would have been bang there or thereabouts. So for me, Home by the Lee is most certainly worth another chance. And I think he will do what he did this year, next year in Ireland, and pick up loads of staying prizes on the way to Cheltenham. So if he does do that, obviously his price is going to contract again. And 20-1, I think, looks pretty juicy at the moment. And then the other one, there isn't a marker for this at the moment. I probably won't be for quite a long time. But I'm going to go with, brace yourself, lads, Galvin to win the cross country next year. Because, I mean, it's not the worst shout in the world, but he probably will be a short price. But I just think if he runs against Delta Work next year, he'll beat Delta Work next year. He's a year younger. Delta Work's going to have probably a couple of pretty significantly tough races before then, and I think Galvin's going to be relatively fresh compared to be a 10-year-old next year, who's 9 now, whereas Delta Work is me 11. So for me, I think Galvin can easily get the upper hand. He almost did this year, so he'd be a bit of a no-brainer unless they make it into a handicap, which is, I suppose, possible because people are clamoring for that, considering it is ridiculous at the moment how if you're top rated in that race, you're just going to be there or thereabouts, aren't you? So yeah, I think those two for next year, particularly the Home by the Loo, I think 20-1's a lovely price. So
it was funny talking about the cross country. I went back into the bar after the race, and someone goes, "Oh, I've got up the TriCast," and I was like, "Oh, brilliant! Someone's got the TriCast up." And then look at it, and it's the first in the betting, the second in the betting, the third in the betting. I was like, "For God's sake, man!"
Some dividend.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though, I've heard some shrewd things in my time, but putting a tip up for a race where the market doesn't exist is the shrewdest play I've ever heard. You can literally make up whatever price you want. No one can prove you wrong before the market's even established.
Exactly.
My lord, that is shrewd.
It's very unorthodox, but that's the way I like
it is,
to play
yeah.
things. Yeah.
Unorthodox is one word for it.
Stupid is another word.
That is another, yeah. We could go all night with this.
Yeah. Imbecilic, moronic. Right, yeah. So Home by the Lee, the main one, but just a bit of fun with Galvin there. And that brings us pretty much to the end, lads. What a dream journey it's been. I hope you both enjoyed it. I certainly have, and thanks very much for getting me on, because it's been absolutely great fun.
Oh,
Thanks
mate,
very
the
much,
pleasure's been all ours. All ours. Well, some of it ours, mainly yours, listening to us. But,
Yeah, a lot of fun's been had, and we got one to do for Aintree as well. So make sure you all watch that at home, because yeah, that'll be an interesting one with the Grand National and then all the big grey ones before that. So looking forward to doing that too. And I think all that's left to say is thank you so much for subscribing over the last few months. We did reach that magic 1,000 number, which is just so great to see. And hopefully you've all enjoyed it along the way. But yeah, make sure you tune in for Aintree. And yeah, that's goodbye from me and goodbye from Jake and Dan as well.
absolutely. Thank you, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure. Sorry about all the losers on my end. But as I say, it's been a pleasure making these videos. Thank you to everyone who came up to us during the week as well. And yeah, we'll see you for the Aintree show in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, thank you guys. And look, if you backed all of our selections, you'd have made a slight profit. So how about that?
Bailing us out yet again.
Lovely stuff. Cheers, guys, and thanks very much for watching. Sorry about Blood Destiny, but you know, they can't all win.